Hi everyone, Jedediah Thomas, the Mind Master here. Today I wanted to talk about different modalities and basically how they work, why they're not really sufficient to do what you need them to do, and basically how they fit into the overall picture of the mind. Be sure to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more content about the mind, the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, traumas, limiting beliefs, and motivation, and everything around that. So, I really just wanted to kind of give a rundown of a lot of different, not only modalities directly, but types of modalities and what part of your brain that they're working on and how they could be potentially effective and how could they could be like not effective depending on what it is that you're trying to do. So one of the first one that is going to come up is going to be like regular talk therapy. And therapy is something that has been established for a very long time. It's something that everyone knows about, and it's usually like one of the most recommended things for people when they have some kind of issue with their mind. And what it entails is basically talking about the thought level. And in some cases, it does talk about the emotional level as well, but it's looking at your emotions through the lens of your logic, right? So if you were to liken it to a computer, normal therapy, normal psychology is just about clicking different files and seeing what pops onto the screen. And they're like, how do you feel now? How do you feel now? How do you feel now? And you feel terrible and you want to fix it, but they can't do that, right? Like all they can do in normal therapy is just make you aware of your issues. And even some of the more supposedly powerful types of therapy, such as like CBT and all of those things, which have a lot of evidence and a lot of research behind them, all they do is just ask you about your feelings. And hopefully, if they ask you about your feelings enough, you'll start to change your thoughts about your feelings. And then potentially over time, that could change your beliefs. But it's kind of like a long, slow process. Um, so I actually did like look on YouTube just to see what CBT was because I've never actually looked into it. And I'm not sure if it gets more in depth than what I saw, but what I saw was like so unbelievably surface level. It's like I don't even know how people pay for that. It's like completely useless to be honest. And basically it's just um, how do you feel about this? How do you think about this? How do you think about how you feel? And then how does that make you feel? And now what does that make you think? And it's like you're going in circles. And in every demonstration I saw, it looked like the person, the patient, we'll call it a victim, because they looked like they were getting frustrated with the process because it was just going in circles. And so I can imagine that it would be frustrating to go through something like that for years and years and years and never actually get a resolution to your issues. Now, if we go down a level deeper, you get to kind of the emotional level. And there's a few different modalities that work on the emotional level. One of the most powerful is called tapping or EFT, emotional freedom technique. And that involves, tapping on different pressure points and whatnot. And I did a whole video about that, about like how it's supposed to work and how it doesn't actually resolve the underlying issues. And if you look here at the mind scale, it basically does work on the emotional level. It works very powerfully on the emotional level, but it doesn't actually resolve the underlying beliefs. So it works on emotion and thoughts, right? So that's a good tool for it's like I treat it as kind of like an ER visit, emergency room visit, but you still need to remove the underlying beliefs, the reason why those emotions are coming up in the first place. Now, kind of on the other end of the spectrum, there are also a lot of things that people do in terms of like actions. So you have like 75 hard and different things that are supposed to, if you keep just like brute forcing it, keep doing the same thing over and over, you'll eventually form habits which will then, change your life, but then you don't deal with the underlying thoughts or the emotions or the beliefs under that. So you could push through it temporarily, but it could also be extremely stressful for you to do that. And there's a high likelihood that you'll stop because you're not actually changing anything underneath the surface. Now, if we go back to the full left side of the mind scale here, you have beliefs, right? So there's a few things that kind of work on the belief level. And one of them is hypnotherapy, right? So what hypnotherapy does is it puts you into a hypnotic state and it starts to install a new program, and that program is supposed to run and then it's supposed to change your life. And I just found out about kind of similar thing. It's called Psych K, and basically what it does, it installs new programs, right? And that works on kind of more of a physiological level. So it actually ties more to the emotional level, believe it or not, because you're pressing on different parts of your nervous system in different ways, which is actually very, functionally similar to tapping, even though the methodology is very different. But you're wiring an emotional bypass is what you're doing with that. But at the same time, you're trying to install a new belief. Now, installing beliefs is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It can be a powerful way to make changes in your life. The issue is that usually it's not the absence of a belief that's the problem. It's the presence of a bad belief that's the problem, or the presence of a trauma that's the problem. So if you install a belief of I am intelligent and you have 100 traumas saying that you're not intelligent, you have 100 other beliefs saying that you're not intelligent, you still install that belief that you're intelligent, but you have all of this other stuff running underneath the surface that still makes you believe that you're not intelligent, even though you now believe that you're intelligent, if that makes sense. So it's basically what it's doing is creating a new program that runs in contradiction to the old programs. And hopefully your mind accepts the new program and there's no issues, but sometimes it can cause conflicting issues in your subconscious, like cognitive dissonance, and it can start to run up your bandwidth and it can cause stress, and you don't actually know why that's happening. And the reason is because you have contradictory programs running. At the same time, you now believe that you're intelligent, you also believe that you're not intelligent. Okay, so the issue is that anytime you're just installing new programs, it's not going to be as effective as actually removing the bad programs that are the reason why you had that issue to begin with, right? As like it's different than just taking out the reason of why you believed that you're not intelligent, because clearly on a conscious level you are, right? But your subconscious doesn't. So it has all of that conflict there. So then we get to the trauma level, and there's a few different modalities that work on trauma, namely like RTT, RRT. There are kind of different ones. There's like a lot of like different ones. So like I'm not, you know, talking about any specific modalities. These are just examples of how different modalities hit different parts of your mind. And what a lot of these do, it's very similar to like inner child work, which I've also done another video on, is that what it does is it takes you as you're experiencing the trauma and it pulls you to a different time or a different place, like bringing your inner child now to the loving arms of your parents or to a new house or whatever, where you supposedly feel safe. And what that ultimately does is leaves the trauma there. It just creates a psychological separation between your experience of that incident and your new experience of that incident. And so basically, it's like you still know the trauma has happened, but it's physically distant from where you are. So instead of like being in the middle of the traumatic situation, you're like maybe watching the traumatic situation on television, or you're listening to it through the phone, but you still know it's happening. Your mind still knows that there's a trauma, right? So it doesn't actually get rid of it. It just creates a psychological separation. In sort of the same vein, there's another modality called NLP, neuro linguistic programming. And what that does is basically kind of similar. Like, let's say you were in a traumatic situation, and they say, well, okay, dim the lights. Okay. So if you're in a traumatic situation, it's still traumatic, even if you close your eyes, which is basically the same effect, right? Close your eyes, put your hands in your ears, and nana nana boo boo, you can't hurt me kind of thing. That doesn't really work. So your mind still knows it's a trauma. It's just less bright than it was before. So what all this ultimately means is that there's a lot of modalities that touch on the right areas of your mind, but they don't actually know how the mind works in a way that effectively removes the trauma or removes the limiting beliefs. And so, what I've figured out how to do is basically just use the brain's normal processes to get rid of that instantaneously. Basically, any traumatic situation gets rid of it in 5 minutes. Any limiting belief, I can get rid of it in 5 minutes just by using your own natural processes in your brain. I don't hypnotize you. I don't do like crazy breathing stuff. I don't have you like, do all these weird body movements and, stand on your head and, whatever all these other things do. Because what they're doing with that is they're running a bypass. Okay. They're trying to create a new object with a new association, and then they're trying to associate that that new object with the new association to the original situation, and that doesn't really work, right? It just creates the original situation with that add-on, right? So it if they knew more about how the mind works, they could probably help people, but like they just don't know how it works. And that's really the unfortunate fact, is that our species has been around this long and we have no clue how the mind actually works. So my goal is to set that straight, because once you actually know how the mind works, it's extremely easy to change it, and you don't have to jump through all of these insane hoops of hypnosis and changing your body stuff and tapping on different points and um all of the things that they do, or talking to a therapist for hours and hours and hours. It's just not necessary, right? It's like, if you have to go from your house to the store, what's the easiest path, right? You just go from your home to the store. It's a straight line, right? But then, like all of these other modalities, they sort of like get you to the store, but not really. It's more like driving past the store, in some cases missing it entirely. But they start going left and then right and then up and down and all this, like all around the place. And they just ignore the fact that you could just go right to the store. And that's what I did, right? So I just cut out all of the fluff, all of the nonsense, and I take the simplest, quickest, most powerful path to resolving all this stuff, and it just goes away, right? And then all that stuff is like, it's really not necessary. And when you see it, it's kind of entertaining. It's like dancing monkeys or whatever, because they're it's like we're all using the same tool, the mind, right? And if the mind is a sword, right, they're using the wrong end of the sword, and they're like impaling themselves with it. And I'm just like, hey, here's how you use a sword, and just whack it, right, and it fixes it. So nothing of what I do is magical or woo woo or anything like that. It's just using the natural processes of the brain to heal, because for whatever reason our brain doesn't know how to heal itself. And I don't know why nobody else has figured it out, but that's a rundown of a lot of different methods of people trying to figure it out. And that's why they just haven't quite hit the target, even though they're kind of like touching on it, but they have no idea what the target actually looks like. So that was kind of a long explanation. There's you name it, there's thousands of modalities, methodologies out there. A lot of I've tried a ton of them. My clients have tried even more than I've tried, and like none of them worked. And then they come to me and it's like I can fix them in minutes, and you know, then it's no longer an issue. So it's like, it's not difficult once you know what it is. You just have to know what it is. So I am, once again, Jedediah Thomas, the Mind Master. Follow me on the channel here. I'm going to be shortly creating a group, the Initiates of the Mysteries of the Mind, for anyone who wants to start, in-depth learning about this stuff, start getting clear on their purpose in life, start fleshing out their vision. And then if in the process of that they need healing from traumas, or they need beliefs removed or changed or whatever, then we can, look at helping them with that. But it's really just a group to really start learning about what the mind is, how it works, and how um, we fit into the world, right? Like, why are we even here to begin with? And what are we trying to achieve? And then basically, what's getting in the way of us achieving that? Thank you for listening. I'll see you on the channel. Bye.